Hey everyone, this is Waylon Lewis. Today I'm honored to bring on Marianne Williamson, who's not just a politician or a public servant, but is a beloved author. Marianne, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
First of all, welcome back. Here you go.
Thank you, thank you. I admire your work, and it's an honor to be with you.
Oh, you're very flattering, very sweet. So I have to just share a personal story of connection to you, if I may. So when I was young, I was a big dork or a little dork, and I was very sweet and dorky, and a lot of people told me to shut up. I grew up in the Buddhist community where there were a bunch of like serious adults trying to meditate. And then there was this dorky, loud little kid. So everyone told me to shut up. We're trying to meditate. We're trying to be serious spiritual people. And one day I read your quote. You have many quotes, many wonderful books. Thank you. But your quote about, you're not doing anyone a favor by shutting up. And I'm sure you could more eloquently uh, recite that quote, but it changed my life. Honestly, it was the first time where I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be myself without shame, without arrogance, but without shame. And thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. That's really beautiful.
It really honestly changed the direction of my life.
That's great. Thank you.
So, Marianne, you wrote all these best-selling, spiritual personal advice books. How did, but you clearly have a heartfelt love or passion for democracy because it can't be easy or fun necessarily always to run for political office. What is your connection to or love for public service?
I came to understand, as dedicated as I am in my own life and professionally, to the issues of personal transformation with a 40-year career behind it. I came to realize that no amount of personal transformation will deal with the fact that the planet is becoming uninhabitable if we don't stop fossil fuel extraction. I came to realize that you can drink all the green juice in the world, but they're poisoning the water and the air and the food. You can do all these things to make yourself transformed, but the zeitgeist of this moment isn't just about yourself. As a matter of fact, a lot of higher consciousness work had circled around into a kind of atomized, narcissistic, it's all about me, it's all about me. The transformation of the planet isn't all just about you. The transformation of the planet is about us. So when I look at someone like a Martin Luther King or a Gandhi, they spoke to both the internal and the external aspects of global change. Martin Luther King said that in order to establish the beloved community, we must have quantitative changes in our circumstances as well as qualitative changes in our souls. But those qualitative changes in our souls don't just mean trying to heal my own issues. Qualitative changes in my own soul also means facing my complacency, facing my using spiritual principle as a justification for not addressing the suffering of other sentient beings around me. And having been raised in a Buddhist environment, there is no justification for ignoring the suffering of other sentient beings. And if
Mm.
you go deep enough into the spiritual core of any of the great religious or spiritual traditions, you will find none of that. You will not find a justification for ignoring the fact that people on the other side of town are suffering. And in some cases, it's not, in fact, in most cases, it's not as simple as, well, they just have awakened spiritually. Um, Martin Luther King had some incredible line about how any religion, he was speaking specifically about religion, but I think this applies to any spiritual path. He says that purports to care about the soul of a man, but does not care about the economics conditions that strangle him or the social conditions that shackle him is a moribund religion awaiting burial. So I began to see that as dedicated I was and continue to be, not only to personal transformation, but also to nonprofit activism. I mean, I've been very much a nonprofit activism person, but I just came to recognize that no amount of private charity can compensate for what is basically a lack of social justice. I would form, nonprofit organizations and we would be all excited that we raised $1 million. But I came to realize that it was multi-billion dollar problems that could not be solved on a
One sec.
personal level or on the level of personal charity. that had to be uh, change brought about by collective action. And that to me is what politics is. That's all that politics is our collective behavior.
So, before we get into, your campaign, I'm going to assume you encourage all of your viewers and friends and community to get involved in local public service or volunteering or caring actively about our world.
There, if we are to move through this phase of our history, this isn't even about a should. This is about if your eyes are open to know what's going on this planet, it is simply the fact that civic activism, political consciousness must become part of what we think of as a well-lived, meaningful life.
Mm.
It's simply about knowing if you're going to be just about you, none of us are going to make it here. It can't be just about me. It can't be just about my people, my gender, my color, my religion. That we've just got to burst out of that. It can't be just about me, my family, or my tribe. The love that will save the world is not just the love for your own children. It's also love for children on the other side of town and children on the other side of the world. It's a shift in paradigm. It's a shift in thinking. And the spiritual community, the higher consciousness community should be leading the way, not lagging behind.
Amen.
I've said for a long time, and I might have said this when you and I talked before, the people, if you have a clue as to what changes one heart, you're the last person who should be sitting out the great political and economic and social issues of the day. You're the last person who should be sitting that out. Because if you know what changes one heart, you're the one with a clue as to what would change the world.
Yeah, it's I interviewed Alice Walker, and she said, I'm a spiritual activist. My spiritual practice naturally leads through empathy, through compassion, through connection to caring about our planet and other people on it. For me, that was so simple, but most of us don't do that. I feel like
if you're Black or you're Jewish or you're any other group with historic persecution, history of persecution, you never thought otherwise.
Yeah.
If you're from a group where no group historically, if you look far enough back, nobody's been without eras of persecution. Nobody has a monopoly on suffering. But sometimes it was so many generations away or even centuries away that perhaps you have forgotten the importance of realizing that if they did it to your grandkids, if they did it to your grandparents, they could do it to your kids. So it's probably not something to ignore.
So beautifully said. Yeah, my last name is actually fake. My grandfather, Bernie Lewis, could not do business. He was Jewish in Manhattan unless he changed his name to a Anglo, Saxon sounding name.
Exactly. And my grandfather was Vishnevitsky, and he came in through, he was Shlomo Vishnevitsky, and he came through Ellis Island. They heard his name. They sent him back. Can you imagine? You make it in steerage all the way over to Ellis Island. You say your name. They send you back. Wow. He came again to Ellis Island, got up to the head of the line. What's your name? Shlomo Vishnevitsky. They sent him back the third time because he was a worker on the Trans-Siberian Railroad, and he was an Anglophile. And there was a railroad car that said Alan Williamson. Alan Williamson, we're not sure if it's at Edinburgh or Liverpool. And so the third time he came in, he goes to the head of the line. What is your name? He went, Williamson, because he couldn't do V's and the W's. And they said, okay, go over there.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, someone in the comments said the Irish, we Irish are still suffering, the other half of me is more Celtic. And yeah, for sure. As you said, no one has a monopoly on suffering, but we have to take that suffering, as you're saying, and extend it through joy and through love and compassion to other people, not just silo ourselves. Is that right?
Well, exactly. And that is really the problem of modernity. And that is metaphysically, the problem is always separation. On the level of the body, we're separate, but on the level of spirit or mind, there's no place where you stop and I start. And once you really understand that, like really get it, that it's not just an opinion, that whatever you do to someone else, you actually are doing to yourself because it will come back at you, whether through them or through someone else, the world becomes a different place.
So first of all, everyone watching, listening, we'll share this on podcasts and various platforms. Make sure you're registered to vote wherever you are in the world, but particularly if you're in the US. And then a couple questions. Like, I feel like there's such sort of passive cynicism, like facile cynicism in the spiritual community about politics, which is understandable sometimes. But why do I've heard you in presidential debates speak eloquently about your love and enthusiasm for democracy. Why is democracy important? Do you have love for it?
Well, I'm enthusiastic about history. And the more you read about American history, the more you realize it's an incredible story. So in 1776, these 56 men signed a document, and that document was radical. It was radical in 1776. It's radical today, actually. And it was a profound fundamental repudiation of systems of governance that had been in place for centuries, which basically said, and I remember when you were a little kid and you learn about the Sun King and the divine right of kings, right? That God had given power to the king, and then the king had a few rich friends that they called the aristocrats, and the government was set up to protect their power. Government was set up in such a way as to foster their entitlement. So the king, the queen, and the aristocratic class were entitled. They were deemed legally entitled to the basic resources of the country, and then everything else that had to do with the land, that had to do with wealth creation, that had to do with education. Everybody else was little more than a serf. Even if they had even in societies where you've gone from slavery to serfdom to a little ahead of it, there was still a class system.
Yeah.
So here in the United States, in these 13 colonies, there was this idea that all men are created equal, and therefore all men are given inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which you and I would call the right to self-actualize, the right to spread your wings, the right to do whatever you want to do with your life. And then it goes on to say that governments are instituted not to foster the entitlement of the upper classes, but the governments are instituted to secure the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everyone. And it goes on to say that if government's not doing that job, that it's the right of the people to alter it or abolish it. So this is just like really this incredible burst of light, this incredible burst of a possibility of enlightenment. Okay, 56 men signed it. By signing it, they were risking their lives.
Mm,
Because if the British had won the war, they all would have been hanged as traitors.
mm,
But 41 of those 56 men were slave owners. So the American story is that from the beginning, baked into the cake, we have been and continue to be both and.
mhm.
Our story is not an either or. Our story is that we are founded on the most enlightened principles that had ever formed the core of a nation. And we have had from the beginning, in every generation, even unto ours, forces who, for their own ideological and or financial purposes, had no intention whatsoever of seeing those principles actualized, find those principles themselves unacceptable to their own financial or ideological interests, and have proven over and over and over again that they would go to extreme, even violent lengths to make sure that they did not. The American story has to do with in every generation, does the generation give into that or repudiate that? So if you look at the historic line, and this is what's so fascinating to me, we had slavery, but we also then had abolition.
Mhm,
We had the institutionalized suppression of women.
mhm.
Then we also had the women's movement leading
Suffrage.
to the 15th Amendment. We did have the Gilded Age, the overreach of capital. But then we also had the establishment of organized labor.
Yeah.
We did have segregation, but then we also had the Civil Rights Movement, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. So when you look at it this way, we're just the latest iteration of an ancient struggle. And
Mm,
the way I see it, it's our turn now.
mm.
Because corporatism, the matrix of corporate powers from insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, big agriculture, big food, big chemical companies, gun manufacturers, big oil and defense contractors, they are a matrix that tyrannizes the American people, that has gotten it's such a grip through their undue financial influence now allowed by Citizens United on our government, that people live at the effect. This is why we don't have universal health care, because of the insurance companies. People are rationing their insulin because of the pharmaceutical companies. We're still not ramping down fossil fuel extraction because of the big oil companies. We don't have common sense gun laws because of the greed of gun manufacturers. Our foods have carcinogens, and we have overly militarized foreign policy because of the defense contractors. But the government itself is in such a grip of this matrix of corporate power that it's become almost a system of legalized bribery, where legislator after legislator does more to serve the profit motive of their corporate donors than to serve the express will of their own constituents. This will not stop unless we stop it. And that's where the Declaration of Independence says, if the government's not doing its job, it's the right of the people to alter it. So I began to realize, based on everything else I've ever studied, it's no different than a personal transformation. Sometimes you have to intervene.
Mm.
And the people need to intervene, because this is like, we all know with drug addicts or with alcoholics, that if you go too far in an immoderate direction, don't expect your, whatever it is, your sobriety or your democracy, to be able to absorb the hits. At a certain point, there has to be an intervention. And that's how I see this moment that we're living in. Now, people who say to me, oh, Marianne, how can you even talk this way? Don't you know fascism is at the door, etc. My response is always, let me guess, you have health care, don't you? Let me guess, you can send your kids to college. You live on more than $15 an hour. You don't have to work more than one job in order to make it. And when you realize that 20% of Americans, 20% of Americans are living on this, I'm fine, you're fine, 20% of us are fine. 20% are surrounded by a vast sea of economic despair, and we know that it's out there. And that represents a force field closer to the gates of the Bastille than a lot of people in this country seem to have any idea.
Well, and meanwhile, we have the GOP literally focusing on canceling food stamps, which my mom helped support my mom. She was one of those you're talking about, the 20% free school lunches. And, Biden, when he got in, we had the Childhood Poverty Act, which reduced childhood poverty by 50% overnight. I mean, we actually can't, there's some comments in here that are saying, I feel hopeless about the future. And people like you and what you're raising, like, I do think hope is tough, but like, we actually can contribute, right? We can help.
But let's talk about what you just said. You're right. The Democrats did pass the child tax cut. They did cut poverty in half for children. When it first happened, my thought was, well, if you could cut it in half, you could actually eradicate it. But even putting that to the side, you're right. They did.
Or you could but again, who was stopping them from doing more?
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
They did pass the child tax credit. And you're right. It did cut child poverty in half. But do you know what happened 6 months later?
Well, the GOP repealed it.
Excuse me, Waylon, wake up, honey. It was a Democratic president, a Democratic House, and a Democratic Senate. The GOP did not repeal it. It expired, and the Democrats did not permanentize it.
I mean, my understanding of that time, and I do, I have a weak memory, but I do read some good journalism, is that it was part of the negotiations. And if there hadn't been pressure to cut it from the GOP, there's no way it would have been cut.
No,
as you know, if you or Bernie became president, right, the most wonderful president ever, you have to work with this other side. So blaming the Dems for that feels...
No. Okay. So this is what we always get. And actually it was Manchin, who's a Democratic senator. But let's talk about this. There are things which, if the GOP does it, we yell bloody murder.
Yeah.
But if the Democrats do it, whether it's Obama or Biden, we're, oh, poor baby, he really tried. Now with Obama, it was in cases where we didn't even try. But with Biden, let's look at the minimum wage, okay? The minimum wage in this country is $7.25 an hour.
Yeah, it's a crime.
Okay, so he said we're going to raise the minimum wage. The minimum wage, there are 1/3 of American workers who live on less than $15 an hour. Half of them cannot even find a place to live. Okay, so the president gave $15. And by the way, in most major cities in the United States, a living wage is over $20 an hour. But the president did lift the minimum wage to $15 an hour for federal workers. And then he said, let's put it in the COVID bill to make it for everyone. Do you know who stopped him?
Mm-mm.
The parliamentarian. Now, the parliamentarian has no real power. If the Republicans are stopped by the parliamentarian, what they do, as George Bush did, is they fire the parliamentarian.
Mm.
Biden says, oh, can't do it. Can't do it. So it was very convenient. He could have gotten around the parliamentarian. No GOP has made Biden approve the Willow Project. No GOP has made Biden give more oil drilling permits than even Trump did.
But
No,
I mean, I would argue this, Marianne.
okay.
I'm happy to criticize the Dems anytime. I'm only a Dem because they respect.
I'm a Dem. I'm running as a Dem. Don't get
I
me wrong.
understand, but they respect equal rights for all, climate action, all this. But
No,
I'm happy to criticize them if they fall out of line. I interview Senator Cory Booker, Congressman Joe Neguse, good people who care. And we don't get to do whatever we want. It's representative democracy and we lose a lot of fights. Could you and others push Biden to do even more? That would be great. I'm all for that. I just don't think, Biden has had the biggest infrastructure climate bill in history by far.
okay, let's talk about that, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so you're right. He's made some very healthy investments in
I just
green.
think cynicism is easy, right? So how do we use that sort of cynicism to move them to do more?
By
Instead of
running.
just saying we're not going to
By
participate.
running. Well, let me answer the question. But the answer is by running. But if you continue to vote for him, that's not pushing him left. If we continue to excuse him, that's not pushing him left. So I know you've got, the talking points have been downloaded. So let's talk about this. You just said that
Well, I don't appreciate how you put that. I have
that
to
wasn't like you personally.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I adore you and I'm all
I adore you.
moving in the right action. Yeah.
And they're saying they're in the ethers.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is you just said something that's in the ethers, which is he has given more healthy investments. He's done more investments than any president. Well, Lincoln was not investing in green energy. Okay. So he's given more healthy investments. What I'm saying, which is simply fact, his approval of the Willow Project, the
Mm.
$8 billion ConocoPhillips
Yeah.
oil extraction project in Alaska, plus the oil drilling permits that he has given, completely nullify the benefits of the green energy investments. Meanwhile, the green energy investments are a fraction of the $858 billion budget, defense budget, and the U.S. defense, which is completely bloated and unnecessary.
Agree.
And the U.S. defense establishment is the single largest emitter of carbon gases on an institutional level.
Mm.
So what I'm saying, Waylon, and look, I'm running as a Democrat. I
Yeah,
want Democrats to win. I'm just saying, I don't think he's the strongest candidate. Because if you say to young people who are literally thinking, I don't even know if I want to have a child because
Yeah.
the planet will be habitable. And you say to him, he's made the biggest investment in green energy. They know. Yeah, he also approved the Willow Project. Yeah, he also gave, this is the time to be ramping down fossil fuel extraction, not ramping it up.
But look, I just want to be clear. Like, I really appreciate your candidacy and your eloquence and your caring and your heart. I say positive things about Biden. That doesn't mean I don't, like you, criticize him for where he falls short.
Oh,
But
I like him too.
He's done so many environmental things that we're not mentioning as well. And I welcome your candidacy for the reason that you can help push, whether you win or no, you can help push the dialogue, the Overton envelope or whatever it's called, so that we can actually take effective action, caring action.
It doesn't push him if we continue to vote for him.
Mm.
It doesn't push him. And when you just said he did so much, I would actually argue with that when it comes to he has given, once again, more oil drilling permits than even Trump did. He has okayed the Willow Project. So yes, there are some healthy investments in green energy. So at this point, I'm reminded of a line that Franklin Roosevelt said, and which is we would not have to worry about a fascist takeover in this country as long as democracy delivered on its promises. So a lot of what you just said, which I hear from people, which is we have to be careful here because the fascists are at the door. It's not that I don't care that the fascists are at the door. I'm doing this because the fascists are at the door. And I would argue that democracy is not delivering on its promises. That's the only way to keep the fascists away. Every other advanced democracy has universal health care. The president has said he would veto a Medicare for all. Every other advanced democracy has tuition-free college and tech school. Every other advanced democracy has paid family leave. Every other advanced democracy has a guaranteed living wage. So I'm saying is I'm not worried in 2024 as a Democrat running and thinking that I'm a better person to take on Trump is because we're not promising enough. So at this point, we have to offer people a more genuine alternative. And I'm not worried about people voting for Trump. You know what my worry is for 2024 is how many people would stay home. When you talk about the green energy investment of this administration, young people aren't buying it because they know what he's done to ramp up for fossil fuel extraction. When you talk about Black people voting in 2024 for Biden, who waited in line for 7 hours, who thought they were going to get voting rights codified, and they did not.
Yeah.
Thought they were going to get serious police reform, and they did not. I'm not worried about their running for voting for Trump, but you better believe the Democrats should be worried about their voting for Cornel West or staying home. That's all I'm saying. That the idea of Bidenomics being enough, that the economy is doing well, that is like an insult to millions of people. The majority of Americans to say that the economy is doing well, I know that's what it says on MSNBC and CNN. For the majority of Americans, the idea that the economy is doing well is viscerally contradictory to their personal experience. And that's why you're seeing people who are, saying to you in your comments that they feel hopeless, particularly young people.
Sure.
That the economy is doing well, that's not their personal experience.
Yeah, I guess I just, I don't think it's MSNBC and CNN. I don't give a care about them, but the actual numbers of jobs and, the recovery from a very difficult period with Trump giving away money to the very wealthy and COVID being devastating.
Okay, may I ask about that? Hold on a second. You're right. Trump get $2 trillion tax cut in 2017. 83 cents of every dollar went to the richest corporations and individuals. It's obscene. It'll never pay for itself.
Obscene.
So this is my question. These first 2 years, we had the White House and the House and the Senate. Why didn't they talk about repealing it?
Yeah, I'm not educated enough to know. But
So the Republicans started all this stuff, and the Democrats haven't stopped it.
But I mean, you quoted FDR.
Better than the Republicans, don't get me wrong, and I'm running as a Democrat. But today, Franklin Roosevelt would be treated like he was too far left to be in the Democratic Party. And everything that I'm standing
Well, he was treated that way at the time, too.
not by the Democrats, because he had progressive Democrats at the time, but he was vehemently opposed by the same forces that would oppose someone like me, but
Exactly.
he said about them their hatred.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But another quote, FDR is on my wall over here. He's generally an idol in many ways. He also said, I want to do what you want me to do, speaking with some activists. Make me do it. So,
well, you're not going to make Biden do it by supporting him. You're going to make Biden do it by supporting someone to the left of him. That's fine.
I'm not arguing against supporting him. Sure.
No, I understand that.
I'm just saying every single time someone like yourself, brings up people's idealism and hope, some of that is leveraged by cynical people out there to say Trump, Biden, they're all the same. I do not agree with that.
No, of course they're not the same. I wouldn't be running. I wouldn't be going through all this if I didn't realize how important it is that Trump not get another term. That be very clear here. It's not that I don't think it matters. I think it matters so much. And I think 2024 is a very different campaign than 2020.
Yeah. I mean, what gave me some hope is like when Bernie barely lost, a lot of his agenda was put into the Democratic agenda. I do agree that we fall short, and I'm happy to criticize the Dems anytime. We need to do better and more and urgently, to your point. I agree with all that. Yeah. And you're so, moving and eloquent. I mean, we need that voice as a reminder of some basic truth, which is we are not in a good place. We are not as you're saying, a functioning democracy in the way we could be for all Americans, right?
Well, yeah. And for many people, the top 20% of the earners in this country, it's it's like we have time. But for 80% of America, there's no time left. This slow walking incremental change. I don't think we have the time left. And as I think you would agree with me, if Trump gets in office or any of those people, well, not all of them, but someone like DeSantis got in office in 2024, we're talking about a serious threat to our democracy here. When you say we're not even functioning as a democracy the way we should be, I mean, there are those who would argue we're not even functioning as a vital democracy. That's according to a study at Princeton. We are actually functioning as an oligarchy.
Mm. Yeah, we definitely, our democracy, our basic health of our democracy has been significantly weakened. I'm running for local city council here, and,
You are?
yeah. And
Really? That's really
yeah,
exciting.
and people like you help us inspire us to actually get into the mud because it is so hard. And to be clear, truly admire you jumping in yet again. I mean, it's
Well,
not,
right back at you. I admire you. That's so exciting that you're doing that.
yeah, I say city council is like the least glorious and hardest in some ways because you're messing with people's backyards. So many people get mad at you because they are paying attention.
But it's all the same. I say to people all the time, I'm not a politician saying send me to Washington to
Right.
fight for you.
Right.
I say send me to Washington to co-create with you
Mm.
because the issues that are the heart of the struggle in Washington are also the heart of the struggle in Boulder,
Yeah.
are also the heart of the struggle in state capitals. So
Well,
wherever we are, it's the same issue of
of
are we going to allow humanitarian and democratic issues to prevail? Or are we going to let forces that really see the real practice of democracy as a threat to their existence and to their wealth prevail? That's the story of our time, no different than any other time in our history.
Well, to your point, I mean, Boulder, like many places, has become wildly, cruelly unaffordable. The
Ex-
homeless population has expanded. Many people hate the homeless, hate immigrants. And then we have fancy cars driving around and people moving out every single week because they can't afford the rent or let alone a mortgage.
That's really what we're talking about here. And those people, excuse me, are not looking at Bidenomics and thinking it's working for me.
Mm,
That's really the point I'm making here.
mm.
And what you just said about Boulder is every city in America.
And
Every,
and even beyond that, we had 1,000 homes burned down in the middle of winter just 2 years ago. So climate crisis is super real now. It's not theoretical
it's
or
not theoretical. Exactly. So once again, ramping up fossil fuel extraction. And then on the other hand, bragging about all this green energy investment. Um, It's
yeah,
not working with young people, and it's not working with people who for whom working, 2 or 3 jobs. We have 1/3 of American workers live on less than $15 an hour and cannot half of them cannot find a place to live.
yeah.
We have people rationing their insulin. We have 1 in 4 Americans living with medical debt. We have half of our seniors living on less than $25,000 a year. So, I always said the Republicans will tell you things are worse than they are. Democrats, though, the establishment, neoliberal Democrats, will say that things are better than they are. And I think we need a president who says we have some serious problems here, but we're
Yeah.
Americans and we can handle them.
So to be fair to Biden, which is not a phrase you enjoy, but let's
That's
take,
not true, Waylon. I think I am fair to the president. You don't
yeah.
hear me personally. I'm not personally demonizing the president.
No, no, no. I don't find you it disrespectful. Criticism, your criticism is warranted and accurate. But the full sentence is, if you were elected, how do you deal with the obstruction and the compromises? I mean, that is part of democracy, right?
Absolutely. There are 3 co-equal branches of government. The president does not have a magic wand. The president shouldn't have a magic wand. Whether you are no matter who you are, Democrat, Republican, Joe Biden, you hope to have a Senate and a House that aligns with your agenda,
Yeah.
and if they don't, they don't. And if they do, they do. I feel like if the country gets to the point where they are ready to vote for me, then that means they've become much hipper to what's really happening. And they're also going to vote for more progressive candidates in the Senate and the House. But another thing I would do, though, is even when there's obstruction from the House and the Senate, once again, neither the House nor Senate made him approve the Willow project, made him give more oil drilling projects, made him go along with the defense budget. I mean, there are certain things that the president has a lot of power over. The president, for instance, I'll give you an example. Our Secretary of Defense is a former board member at Raytheon.
Mm.
These are presidential appointments. The president has the power of executive orders. The president, if he really wanted to push through on the minimum wage, could have fired the parliamentarian. They could have gotten rid of the filibuster. And more than anything, the president has the bully pulpit. And I would tell the truth. The Democrats tell the truth, but they don't tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth when it comes to the establishment elite there, the corporatists who are in charge. And I would tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And I would not see myself as there for 8 years because I would govern in a way that nobody trying to get reelected would govern and just lay it down and then hand it over to somebody younger at the end of 4 years. We need to make a U-turn in this country. I wouldn't be able to make in 4 years the entire U-turn, but I think I'm the one who could wisely and compassionately, because right now, the Republican policies are headed straight to the iceberg, whatever form the iceberg takes. The Democratic corporatist policies would have us hit the iceberg at a different angle.
Mm.
No, we cannot at this point. We are in urgent territory here when it comes to things like the environment. Okay. With me, you'd see that at the end of 4 years when I fly away on that helicopter, she got us around the curve. And then the younger generation takes it from there. But at least you had this visceral experience that we started the fundamental reform. We need an economic new beginning.
Yeah.
Everything I've talked about, whether it's universal health care, tuition-free college, guaranteed living wage, paid family leave, these are moderate positions in every other advanced democracy. And they should be considered moderate positions in ours. And
Amen.
you're not push them towards it unless you actually start voting differently. Not voting for Republicans, but during a primary, voting for someone who actually shows that there is a voting base for this so that you create actual leverage.
Mm. Well, I agree. There's so many urgent issues, and they're truly urgent. Like the 1,000 homes burning. Just things have changed here. Toxic smoke, so many days a year from wildfires. To some of the comments, insulting myself. I'm okay with that. I've been insulted before, but I would say Marianne is not. You're a practiced, powerful woman and individual. It's okay to have a discussion and to disagree and have an intelligent discussion. We don't need to have like a cult worship Instagram live. You're running for president and we should have dialogues. I'm a journalist, not a obsequious fan. I am a fan though. So, I hope you welcome dialogue.
I didn't take anything you said as a personal insult, and I hope you don't
Yeah.
feel that I was. I mean, we have to stop
Not at all.
about this. We just got to duke it out. That's what democracy is. It's
I would
messy.
love to duke it out with you forever. It would probably be not much duking, but a lot of like dialogue. I think we need dialogue on these issues. What you're saying that we are really not being a responsible, kind country, let alone facing the iceberg, the reality of climate crisis and fascism. It's wildly true. And I think, you're incredibly gifted with the bully pulpit, your ability to connect and to speak in a heartfelt way that's accessible. And I welcome that
Thank
in
you.
this race. I do respect Biden. I do think it's hard to applaud someone who's actually, in the mud trying to work. His majority was as weak as could be, as with Manchin and Sinema. But, do I also welcome pushing him farther? Like FDR invited those activists? Yes, 100%. Do I welcome you running? 100%.
But once again, and I thank you, my just running is not pushing him left.
Mhm.
People endorsing me and voting for me
Mm.
is pushing him left.
Mm.
Just being in the conversation does not push him left.
Well, it's a wake up call. I mean, exactly to your point. Like, we have to be, if we believe in taking climate crisis seriously, all that, healthcare, to your point, so many different levels, we're really behind the times. We're barely a functioning democracy, as you were saying. We need to take that U-turn, not just moderately hit the iceberg at a different angle. I think you said that really
Well,
well.
one of the things that I've realized is that the American people are not the problem. When it comes to all of these issues, healthcare, environment, college, even gun laws, interestingly enough, the American people are a little bit left of center. Democrats and Republicans want all those things. The problem is that the government does more to serve its corporate donors than to serve the express will of the people.
Mm.
So the express will of the people was that one of the reasons they elected Biden was because they wanted that higher minimum wage. So, I hope that people who do feel that this is not just about someone being in the conversation. If somebody's just in the conversation, the DNC could care. And let me, if I may say so, the way I have been treated by those guys, this is not an honorable group.
Mm.
Okay. So,
Yeah,
there's a political media industrial complex,
sure.
and they have a
Believe that.
predetermined agenda, and they have a predetermined set of people that they feel are qualified to lead, because what they call qualified is people who are qualified in maintaining and perpetuating their status quo. What we need is someone qualified to disrupt it. And so this is not just about adding to the conversation. If I want to just add to the conversation, I'll just write a book and not take all the stuff that you get when you run for office. It's
Yeah.
got to be people who actually give to a campaign, vote for a campaign, keep it in there. Hint, hint, everybody, Marianne2024.com. This is serious stuff. And if all we're doing is saying, oh, it's really nice to add to the conversation, as some people might, I think it's a moment for us to think we need to get serious here and actually create the political power to push them left. Just talking about it does not of itself push them left.
Yeah, I think again, I completely believe you about the DNC because that's how they treated Bernie. And in a way, it's a reflection in that, you represent a threat or a power that isn't part of, they want to win and they want to control, which is understandable, but all power to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Marianne, thank you so much. And you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you. And listen, I just think it is so cool that you were running for city council. And I hope that all of your listeners, I mean, that's really inspiring to me. I think the more of us who are part of this, whatever this movement is,
Yeah.
actually running for office, I just think that's so great. If I can ever do anything to help you,
Oh,
to support you, I don't know if my name would be helpful or not, but if it
well,
is, if I go there, and I will be going to Boulder, I'd love to show up. I just think it's great. Send me the link. I want to be one of your donors.
oh, you're so sweet. Yeah. I mean, we interviewed Senator Booker, Cory Booker, somewhat recently. And I said, next time you're in Boulder, come, we'll go get gelato. So I would love to host you here. You obviously very popular in Boulder and beloved. So anytime. And yeah, city council is small potatoes, but it's
No,
hard.
not in today's world. Not
Yeah.
in today's world, and not in a city like Boulder for all the reasons that you said.
Mm.
There's nothing small potatoes about that homeless population. There's nothing small potatoes. That's really my point to you. There's nothing small potatoes about all these people can no longer afford their rent, to afford where their parents lived, who honestly cannot make it. I was my Firelight chat this week is Gen Z economics. These young couples who can't even afford to live together, and it's just, when they're put down for living in their parents' basement, you think they want to be in their parents' basement? So no, there's nothing small potatoes about running for city council. And I hope that you inspire a lot of other people to do it too.
Oh, you're so sweet. I'll send you a photo of my yard sign. It has me and my puppy on it. I think you'll love it.
And I'll send you our Marianne Williamson yard sign. You'll consider whether or not to put that up.
I will put it up.
But thank
As
you.
long as well, no conditions, but I would love for you to visit. We'd love to have you here.
Thank you. I'll be there. Thank you.
All right. Marianne, everyone go check out your website. Again, it's Marianne. Is it Marianne?
24.com, Marianne2024.com.
Right. And we'll put this out. Please share it. Get the word out. Like you were saying, all of us have some power. We can share this, share it with 3 friends, whatever you like to do.
Thank you. Much love.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you for running.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Time soon.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, you are so sweet. You're so good.
I don't Marianne. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Please share it. Get the word out.
We okay?
Yeah, I think it's just echoing from Instagram delay. But
Okay.
great. Marianne, how do I send you like the yard sign or my website?
Please do. Please do. You want my personal address? How do we do it?
Whatever you want. Yeah.
Well, you know, my personal is Marianne at Marianne2024.com.
Okay.
But if you're sending me something personal, like your yard sign or something,
No,
but
I just don't put photo of it. I wouldn't bother you with a yard
okay.
sign.
Oh, yeah, send it Marianne at Marianne2024.com.
Okay, cool.
Thank you so much. Oh,
Thanks
my
so
bad.
much for your time. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye.
Okay.